the path that's normally taken doesn't always work, especially for entrepreneurs with, no track record or no history maybe, which I was at the time. So I had to get creative, right? So I'd say creativity and tenacity are the two that I think of. There was just no chance it wasn't going to work in my mind. Like, it didn't matter what it took. It didn't matter what I had to do. If I had to fly in and, ride to every one of these accounts on my own, it was going to work. I mean, I could keep banging my head against the wall and trying the same thing, or I can get creative and take a different approach. And so I think that's what really caused me to get creative, is that there was just no other way out, right? There was no other solution. Like, I had tried one thing, it didn't work. It's time to try something else. And if that had not worked, we would have tried something else, and then we would have tried something else. And that actually is kind of the story of that company, is that, despite that initial story and we got in business with our first distributor, it wasn't, smooth sailing from there. I mean, most people know about the controversy that company and product faced in 2010, but the product that we launched wasn't even called Four Loko. It was called Four. It was in a different, flavor, different alcohol content, different packaging. And so there were a lot of additional no's and additional tenacity and creativity that it took to get us to where that company ended up and product ended up becoming a success. We're trying to diversify and figure out some different products, because we had almost lost an entire company based on a change in regulation. So it was a bit scary. We also went a little too far, too fast on innovation without any guardrails around it. And so that was kind of the second thing that almost took our company under. But for me, it was a different company at that time. We were a little bit more stable. We weren't a startup. We weren't as scrappy anymore. We had hired in a president from Heineken who was doing a great job. We were a little bit more, I guess, professionalized, or a little more buttoned up. And that was a little bit uncomfortable for me. I liked the kind of fast-paced growth, innovative nature of it. And I was trying to find my place within that company. One of the things I realized is that extremes can bond people, right? The high highs and the low lows. And my partners and I had gone through those, and it clearly kept us bonded. But now we were at this nice, steady state. And it was starting to expose some cracks in our partnership and in the relationships. And so we didn't see the world the same. I was trying to find how I was going to contribute to our company. I wasn't really happy within the company. My wife was pointing out to me, she said, "You haven't been yourself for quite a while now. We need to just figure something out." And so I went back to my partners and I explained to them, I'm not happy. I want to figure something else out to do, or I want to take this company in the direction that I want to take it. And so I'll sell. Why don't you guys just buy me out? And this is the second of a few no's in this story, but they ultimately came back and they said, "No, we don't want to buy you out." And there was no obligation to do that. And I said, "Okay, well, why don't you let me buy you out then? That way I can kind of run the company how I want to do it." It took some time, and they ultimately came back and they said, "No, we're not going to let you buy us out either." And it was tough. Yeah, it was tough because I was starting to feel a little bit like I was being held hostage. And I said, all right, well, maybe there's a different approach. And so I went and created what I thought the value of the company was. And I said, "Guys, I'm a buyer or seller. You get to decide whatever you want to do." And they ultimately came back and they said, "No, we're not going to do anything." And so it was just really frustrating. So there's these chain of no's that started from this amazing place. And mind you, neither of them are right or wrong. They're just different perspectives, right? I looked at it one way, they looked at it a different. But ultimately, this is almost a matter of a year that this was going on. And it was getting to be a toxic environment within our company. And so I went to a trade show that all of us were supposed to go to. No one else showed up, so it was kind of weird. But at the end of that first day, that Monday, I went back to my hotel room. I opened my computer, and there was an email from my partners telling me that they had essentially fired me from the company I helped co-found. I had known that I needed to get out of that company or change that company for probably
over a year.
Probably years at that point, yeah. And what I was unwilling to do myself ultimately just happened to me. It was a pretty powerful and devastating short-term story, but it forced me to start figuring a lot of things out. Like, okay, so much of my identity had been wrapped up in that company and that product, a lot of it had been wrapped up in the idea that, you know, you work for a living. I came from a very blue collar family and area, and like, what was I going to do now? What was I all about? And it gave me some time to step back and think. And ultimately, it was the best thing that had ever happened to me, because it forced me to look at what I really wanted to do and what I was really aligned with, and kind of put me where I am now. I think the initial shock set in, and then I've always kind of been a go mode type person. And so there was this feeling of relief, elation, whatever it may be. And then that lasted for probably about a week or so. And then it was kind of like, oh shit, what do I actually do now? How does life actually look? And it took a lot of, I talked to a lot of people. I found out that it wasn't it felt like I was the only person this had ever happened to. And as I talked to people, I realized it was not, or I was not, and that this was actually relatively common, especially in companies that have, you know, odd numbers of owners or partners or whatever it may be. I think the biggest lesson that I took away is like, trust yourself. I knew that I was in a place that I didn't want to be within that company for a long time. I just couldn't I couldn't see the path forward. And so, as I mentioned, what ultimately I knew I needed to do happened to me because I didn't proactively make the changes necessary. And so I would say, you know, one of the key lessons for me taking that away is like, trust your gut, be proactive, make the decisions and the transitions and changes you need to make to be happy and to progress. And then I think it's hard when I've heard this, it's kind of a cliche saying, but it's hard to see, you know, the big picture when you're kind of in the weeds. And that revealed itself to me too. Like when I had some space and time, I was actually able to start to realize what I wanted to do and what I thought I maybe was good at versus what I wasn't. The self-imposed maybe, but the company was so intense, or the job within the company was so intense, that I just couldn't have those kind of like realizations or like thoughts while I was in it. So it's, And then I truly believe like things happen for a reason. It all works out in the end, and all, you know, things like that. And it, you know, held itself to be true again. I think, first of all, it's always harder than you imagine it's going to be, whatever it is, right? At least for me, I can usually see a clear path to the end, and it's never that path. It's always harder. There's always more obstacles to overcome. But, you know, the tenacity and the mindset that I'm gonna do it, and it's gonna work, and I'm gonna make it work is huge. And I think, you know, for me, it's the matter of just getting going. Like, I would tell myself, just go. When you decide you're going to do something, just do it. Don't worry about it being perfect. Don't worry about how to start. Just start. Just do something, right?